Good sound sleep is essential for our overall health and well-being. Unfortunately, though, more than 100 million Americans of all ages fail to get a good night of sleep or on a regular basis. The inability to fall asleep, stay asleep, or remain awake can indicate and contribute to serious health problems. Here to talk with us about sleep disorders is Dr. Robert Dawkins, Clinical Director of West Florida Hospital's Sleep Disorders Center. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Well, how many different types of sleep disorders are there, and what are some of the most common ones?
Well, there are over 80 different sleep disorders. Many people have heard of just a few of them. Sleep apnea, narcolepsy is very commonly heard about, restless legs, and periodic limb movements. Those are the most commonly heard of sleep disorders, but as I said, there are over 80, and one of the challenges to treating sleep disorders is making sure that if a person has more than one, you sort of address all of the ones they have, or you don't make them better.
Well, tell us about some of those more common ones that you just mentioned.
Well, probably the one people have heard the most about would be sleep apnea. Apnea meaning not breathing. Sleep apnea means not breathing in your sleep. This is because over the last few years there's been increasing data to associate sleep apnea with high blood pressure, heart risk of stroke, as well as risk for accidents.
Now, is this something that someone notices or feels themselves, or is this something that a spouse or other family member may notice and tell them about?
The simple answer is yes. Many people are aware that they are not sleeping well, but probably even more are pretty much unaware of the sleeping problem itself. They tend to feel that they sleep through the night, but they're just tired the next day. Sometimes they cover that up. For example, they drink a lot of coffee, and they say, well, I'm not sleepy, but you ask them when they're drinking 2 pots of coffee per day. So the outside symptoms that the person might experience are sometimes fairly subtle, but more importantly, as I said, there are health and safety risks that are associated with sleep apnea.
So at what point should they really seek out treatment for this, or realize this is more than just, I've just been doing a lot lately, I'm burning the candle at both ends? You know, when do they say this is maybe something more than just my routine's out of sync?
Well, obviously you shouldn't be burning the candle at both ends for too long, but we all do that. Generally, if a person is described as snoring very loudly, if people tell them they stop breathing, if they are very tired or sleepy in the daytime, these are all outward signs, especially if they have high blood pressure, especially if it's recent onset, or they are having trouble controlling their high blood pressure. If they have type 2 diabetes, there's a good chance that they also have sleep apnea, a very common association. So these are some of the things that are associated enough to suggest that they should be evaluated.
So this can complicate these other issues that you were mentioning?
Well, actually there's data to suggest that sleep apnea can actually cause high blood pressure and heart failure. Certainly there is a correlation with heart attacks and strokes, increased risk for heart attack and stroke. Definitely an increased risk for irregular heartbeats such as recurrent atrial fibrillation. It increases or complicates the blood sugar control for diabetics.
Well, some people may have heard the term CPAP. Tell us a little bit about, it's a machine, I believe. Tell us a little bit about that and what that means.
Commonly referred to as CPAP. It stands for continuous positive airway pressure. The way most sleep apnea occurs, the most common form of sleep apnea that's out there, is what's called obstructive sleep apnea. And what happens is the airway collapses right in the pharyngeal area. If you think about it, from your nose back into your pharynx, the air is flowing through a fairly rigid structure. For one thing, it's going inside the skull. And below the pharynx, the trachea has cartilaginous rings that keep it rigid. But the pharynx is the part that both food and air have to go through, so it's all soft tissue. When you go to pull air in, that area can collapse. So continuous positive airway pressure, CPAP, keeps the airway open by simply blowing the air in the nose.
Well, how can people get the most benefit from this machine, or why do people try it and then not use it? Or, you know, we've all gotten home with stuff and
they get the most benefit from it by using it, but that is the challenge. You know, I won't kid you, it's a bit of a nuisance to have to put it on every night, and and keep it clean and replace the mask and things like that. The issue is making it comfortable. Many people don't realize there are probably 40 or 50 different masks on the market. There is one that's comfortable, that'll fit your face. Very often they have the wrong type of mask, the wrong size, they have it on too tight. The machines have a humidifier usually associated with it. Adjusting the temperature of the humidity, or the humidifier can affect the humidity at the nose and affect how well they tolerate it. And sometimes the symptoms are not what they would think they would be. For example, too much dry air can make your nose run. Well, people often think, well, I've put too much moisture in my nose, that's why it's running. And in fact, just the opposite has occurred. There's too little moisture. So it's important to work with the doctor and the therapist that help them get set up with the machine to get the right pressure settings and the right humidity settings. One thing that's really good about the new machines is they actually record the amount of time that you're using it, but also whether the mask is leaking. And it actually can upload that data to the internet. So when you go into the lab or go see your doctor, he can actually pull up on the internet and look at the data to show how you're doing on the machine.
Okay. Well, what sleep problems are most associated with aging?
That's another. As we age, our real need for sleep probably doesn't change much, but the way we get that sleep does change. I one time used the association or the analogy of narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a problem of sleep regulation. And what happens is as we age, our sleep regulation gets weaker and weaker. So what typically occurs is that people sleep in shorter periods. They are awake for a while, then they're asleep for a while, then they're awake for a while, and they're asleep for a while. Now, at an early stage, say, shortly after a person is retired and no longer has to get up and go to work every day the next day, this might take the form of falling asleep a little bit early, being awake during the night some, and then going back to sleep and sleeping through the day or through the early part of the morning, and then maybe taking a little nap during the daytime.
So naps are good.
I didn't say that. They're not bad. It just depends on how you do it and how it works into what you need. But as people get older and become somewhat less active because of other physical limitations, it can actually become very much uncoupled from the daily routine. So the person sleeps off and on throughout the day and the night. Okay. And the families often complain about that. They often come to see me for that.
Well, we hope they come see someone because it is a problem. And thank you for being here, and we appreciate it.